You are watching Influence Media, PSI TV, the Netflix of biz brands.
My guest today is Dr. Paul Joel, and he wrote the book A Man Like You and Me. He is a retired physician and he lives in New York. Yes?
Yes.
And he takes his readers on a spiritual adventure. It's a story staged in Europe and the beautiful Tears Church in Italy. But you know what? There are so many additional amazing locations in this book. So, Dr. Joel, thank you for being my guest today.
Great to be here.
Awesome. So, before we get started, you suffered a brain injury that caused you at one point to lose your memory, and then a miracle happened and your memory was returned. Now, what happened to cause the injury, and what was the miracle that gave you your memory back?
Okay, again, I'm the physician in the book, and I'm driving to work to see patients in the office on March 25th, 2019. And suddenly I'm out of my mind. I don't know how to drive the car. I don't know how to use the cell phone. And fortunately, a policeman comes by and calls my wife, and I wind up getting admitted to the hospital. I'm one of fewer than 500 people in the history of the world to get this god-awful disease, Hashimoto's encephalitis. So my whole brain lit up like a Christmas tree. The parts of the brain that are responsible for memory, I'm left-handed, so the right temporal lobe and right hippocampus are very important for memory. They were destroyed. And I was treated with chemotherapy and steroids for 2 years. And my wife is used to having somebody who had used to having a husband with a memory. I had this amazing memory that I never really appreciated, to tell you the truth. And suddenly I'm a moron, basically. Okay, and I came home a couple of months later, and I have to take 6 or 7 tablets in the morning and evening, and I have to write it down each day and then cross it off immediately because 2 minutes later I have no idea if I took the medicines or not. There's no short-term memory. And this went on for 2 years of being treated with chemotherapy and steroids, and nothing changed on the MRI, nothing changed with me. And then they stopped the medicine. And then a year later, off medicines for a year, okay, suddenly on April 29, 2022, miraculously, my memory came back. That's it. Okay, and the weird part of this is I came home from the hospital I was admitted March 25th, 2019. I came home on May 2nd. So May 2nd was a good day. And that's the birthday of my brother-in-law. And April 29th, when I got my memory back, is the birthday of his wife.
Wow.
Okay. And they're the closest thing that I have to a brother and sister. Like, he's the brother I never had. I'm very close to them.
Okay. So I want to point out to the listeners that Dr. Joel is also the protagonist in his book. So you may hear him referring to things back and forth. So in a nutshell, his story is actually captured in the book, but we'll get into that a little bit later. So Dr. Joel, your memory has returned, but you still have a brain injury that affects you in many ways. Now, you wrote me an email and told me in the email that during this interview, should I need to cut you off, that I should do that. Why did you share that with me?
Because this is still not, I still feel like I'm walking around with somebody else's brain in my head. Okay. Before March 25th, 2019, I'm 70 years old. Okay. I could talk to you, have a conversation with you, and talk to my wife at the same time. I could review a case, continue reading the case, and talk to my wife at the same time. And I never thought anything that anything was special about that, because nerves travel at the speed of electricity. So of course I should be able to do back and forth quickly. It looks like I'm doing it at the same time, but I'm switching back and forth. Well, I can't do that anymore. It's one thing or the other. And then what happens is I have to focus to do like even menial things as if my life depends on it. Like I'm trying to play football and catching the ball in the air again. Okay. And I can't go back and forth quickly. And I keep focusing, trying to answer the question or do this menial thing until it's done. And I have a tendency to just keep doing this, and I'll take up too much time.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm glad he shared this, because should I have to redirect the conversation, I don't want anyone to perceive that I'm being unkind but
No,
Dr. Joel
you're
had,
just doing your job. You're
yes,
doing your job.
he's
Okay?
asked me specifically to do this just based on how the brain injury still continues to manifest today. But he's done a good
Again,
job so far. So,
and again, I'm very grateful that my memory came back. Again, this is still not my brain, but I also, at the same time that I had the brain injury, I had the peripheral neuropathy. So my feet are numb, my fingers don't work. That hasn't changed. Okay. And the MRI of my brain hasn't changed, by the way. I get an MRI every year. So although the memory's back and the areas that are responsible for memory are destroyed, I have my memory back. Okay. But still, I have a peripheral neuropathy. I fell down a flight of stairs and broke my wrist a couple of weeks ago. And I have numb feet, and you know, there's still issues going on here. And there's still issues with this brain because it's not my brain yet. But I'm hoping in a couple of days it will be. I'm hoping for another miracle. I've had a lot of them. I'm spoiled.
okay. So by the way, guys, Dr. Joel is an actual medical doctor, not like me doing my doctoral studies, and I'll get my Dr. Trudy Behrman soon. He's an actual medical doctor. So
I'm board certified in internal medicine and also in pulmonary. And if I wasn't board certified in pulmonary, I would never have met my wife in real life. And the next thought was pulmonary. Who gives a crap about pulmonary? Look at this woman. We're married 40 years. That's the beautiful bond.
All right, awesome. So, Dr. Joel, your book, A Man Like You and Me, appears in 2 book categories: traveler and explorer biographies and memoirs. How much of this story in A Man Like You and Me is actual fiction, since the book does also fall into the category of memoirs? How much of it is actual fiction?
The whole thing is nonfiction. There's just a few different details that are different, okay? But it is completely true. Okay, chapter 1 is when I got converted in Tears Church in Germany, okay? And chapter 2 is with the bad day in Vienna. The only difference is this. In the beginning of the book, my wife is not there. The beautiful blonde isn't there, but of course she's there in real life, okay? So that's a little bit different. And in the book, the episode where the crazy guy with the knife is charging her on a train and I'm standing behind her and I risk my life to save her, okay? In the book, it's in the bakery. That's the only difference.
So
It's
there's
true.
some creative difference, but not too much. So it does qualify as a memoir from that perspective, but it is an adventure because there's so many twists and turns in those stories. Now, you are a medical physician, and you say in your, that's why physicians specialize. It's so difficult to differentiate the people from the plants. That was a very interesting statement. In current conversations, we're talking about basic biology. It's being redefined in the conversations around gender, the definition of a woman, and so on. Why would you say it's difficult to differentiate people from plants?
I was commenting on the ridiculous aspect that only the physician can declare a person dead. Okay, and I'm saying that this hospital that you're thinking about, okay, the most important aspect of the hospital has a morgue, and we want to keep the idea that people are dying here out of the patient's view. So if you want to see a person, if you want to see a nurse move quickly, okay, tell her somebody's dead, and they'll get rid of the body in 2 seconds. The patient who's complaining that they have pain, they'll wait for a half hour. Okay, it's kind of like tongue in cheek. So again, the person could be stone dead for hours, and the nurse could know it, and 5 million visitors could know it, but he's not officially dead until a physician comes to be the umpire and says he's dead and declares him dead and signs a death certificate. Until then, he's alive. Legally, he's alive.
Yes.
Okay?
I've seen that like on airplanes, and they're doing CPR long after they know that it made no sense.
Right.
But rather than have that person dead on board, they're waiting for that doctor to declare the person dead. So that's what you mean. Okay, all right.
So he's like a fancy umpire. He's calling balls and strikes.
So in your book, you also say, no wonder I hated working in the hospital. This is Paul Joel, the protagonist in the story, saying, no wonder I hated working in the hospital. It's the institution of death. The hospital's main function is to keep death out of the patient's view. That's why every hospital had a morgue. You kind of alluded to that a moment ago. considering that your book is not just based on fiction, what would you say to medical personnel that are actively working in hospitals today? What would have made working in a hospital more pleasant for Dr. Joel in your book?
There's nothing. Okay. As a matter of fact, the care is worse today than when I wrote the book. Okay. And my mother-in-law, by the way, was just admitted. She had multiple fractures, bleeding all over the place. She waited in the emergency room for 9 hours before anyone saw her. That would be unheard of when I was an intern or resident. Okay. That was last week. So it's not better, it's worse. I think there's more shortages of staff. Um, there's no accountability. Like, you can't just call over the emergency room and say, "Hey, what is this?" Somebody who's a 91-year-old lady who's on blood thinners, who looks like they went 15 rounds for the heavyweight championship of the world with multiple fractures, is sitting there for 9 hours unseen.
Wow. Now, just reading up on you and researching you, you seem to have had a difficult childhood, and love seemed to have been a missing ingredient in your upbringing. So your protagonist, Paul Joel, is living your adventure through the pages of the book. And then he meets this beautiful blonde. Now, we do want the readers to go get the book. So, without giving away the story, Dr. Joel, how does the love for this beautiful blonde impact the protagonist, Paul Joel?
My whole world changed. The protagonist is me. I'm that guy. Okay. If you read the book, you know who I am. Okay. There's no difference between Paul Joel, the author, and the character, and me. Okay. My entire world changed. I was miserable. The whole world seemed like a terrible place. And nobody was interested in me. I had a tough, terrible childhood, starving, and my parents weren't interested in me. I mean, I was dumb, okay? And here I am, I'm 3 years old, I'm not saying any words. You're supposed to be able to say 2 words with meaning by the age of 1. And I had no pediatrician, and a friend of my parents said, "Hey, maybe he should see a physician. This is not right." So I was sent to a female pediatrician, who sent me to a male pediatric neurologist. And my parents were worried that I'm retarded, and I remember the look on their face. And I'm 3, and I have this great memory, okay? And he says, "No, he's not retarded. He's aware of his environment." I didn't know what environment meant. I thought it was a body part or something, but I knew it was a good thing I was aware of it. He'll learn to talk. He's just slow. He's very slow. Basically, he's dumb as a box of rocks, but he's not retarded. That was the upshot. So then, because my parents worked multiple jobs, and because there was no daycare, I'm old, okay, and they were Jewish, so I went to yeshiva. Yeshiva is like some kind of special torture chamber if you're not good at school, okay? In the morning, you start the morning at 8 o'clock in the morning, you get home the day ends at 5. In the morning, you learn Hebrew, how to read Hebrew, write Hebrew, Jewish history, the Old Testament. And there's a break for lunch. And in the afternoon, somebody comes in and teaches you what you learned in public school, reading, writing, arithmetic, whatever. And I was the dumbest kid in every subject, and I was trying. Okay, then we moved to a different part of Brooklyn. Now, instead of walking 3 blocks to school, I had to walk 4 blocks, take a bus for 6 miles, walk another block to Yeshiva Rabbi David Leibowitz.
So
New
how
kids, new
did the
teacher.
beautiful blonde impact Joel's life, Dr. Joel's life?
There's love. Okay, I mean, the entire world changed. Okay, but the bottom line is, the person who really changed me the most was this teacher in 3rd grade. Okay, at the end of the class, he said, "I need to talk to you after class." And they said, "I don't know what's going on with you, but when I call you in class, you seem to have some idea what's happening. But when you take these tests, you're the worst student I've ever had in my entire teaching career. Don't you study for the test?" I announced that there's a test. And I said, "Why should I waste my time studying? I'm dumb. I don't get home till 6 o'clock at night. There's homework in the other subjects. Okay, I barely have enough time to get ready for the next day. Why should I waste my time studying?" And the next week, he changed my life. Okay, he said, "Look, you announced that there's a test," and in a loud voice, he said to me, "There's a test tomorrow. I expect you to study. Do you understand English, or is English a second language for you?" And I got very embarrassed, because everyone in that class, including me, were parents of immigrants. students of our parents were immigrants. Okay, and my father had a very tough time with English. My mother was a genius with languages, but he struggled. He would say Wednesday, Wednesday. Okay, so I studied and got an A, and then my whole world changed. It wasn't dumb.
Now we're kind of running a little late, but
Okay.
you just mentioned that you grew up Jewish, studied Hebrew and all of that, yet your story has you in a Catholic church.
Right. I was
So,
converted. I was that again. I never believed in God. Okay, and when I asked my wife to marry me, okay, she's she's a living, breathing saint. In addition to being beautiful, in addition to being brilliant. Okay, and she's Catholic. And she said, "Well, I'll marry you, but you have to get baptized." And I said, "You know, I don't believe in God." She said, "Well, that's fine. We baptize infants. Nobody's going to ask you anything." So I was baptized in November 4th, 1981. We were married January 24th, 1982. And this adventure is October 1982. Okay. So I never believed in God. And then I walk into Tears Church in Germany. Okay. And of course, it's in Germany. And one of the mottos, one of the take home messages of the book is don't hate people. Okay. I hated Germans until then. Okay. And here we are. My whole life has changed. Germany is beautiful. And I'm with my wife. The whole world has changed when there's love in your life.
So your book is also a travel and explorer biography as one of the categories. You just mentioned Germany. What are some of the other locations? I know the book also talks Tears Church is in Italy, isn't it?
It's in Germany.
It's in Germany. Okay. So is the story primarily in Germany, or is there other
No, there's one day in Germany. Okay, that's October 15th. The next day we're already in Vienna, and there's this supernatural events there that happen. Okay, and we were in Rome, and here's something that again, October 16th was the bad day where I saw a Christmas tree and an Easter candle, and then Jesus, and I was petrified, and I couldn't get out the door. And I'm a Pulmonary fellow from, who grew up in Brooklyn. Since 1921, when they had the fire in the Coconut Grove nightclub in New York City, there's a law that says you can't lock people in. You can lock the establishment, nobody can come in, and it's closed, it's locked. You don't want anyone to rob you. But once somebody can open the door, you can't lock them in every Western country since 1921. And here I am, I'm standing there trying to get out. I can't get out. And of course, the day before, my wife writes this list on a sheet of paper. One of them includes St. Bridget of Sweden. And the next day, that day, I'm trying to get out, and this lady comes to the door and opens the door for us, and we run out. The next day, I buy this book of saints, and I'm looking at July 23rd, the feast day of St. Bridget of Sweden, and there's the face of that woman who opened the door for me. Okay, she may have been living in the 1500s, but I saw her October 16th, 1982. This is true.
Wow.
Okay, and I have a copy of the list that she wrote down. Okay, and in the list it has Paul, Stephen, name of our second son, and get this, we're always arguing. Okay, this is October 15th, and we had a map of Munich that they give you at the train station for tourists, and she's folding in a certain way. It looks like there's a J at the Wittelsbach fountain. So after dinner, this October 15th dinner, well, she was there. Okay, in the book she's not there. We're running to this fountain, and she says it means James. It means our first son's supposed to be James. So I said, how do you know it's not Joseph or John? Like, and she dismisses me like I'm an idiot. Of course it's James. Okay, so we're running to see if there's a James or Joseph or John, Jesse, whatever the heck is on this fountain there. Okay, and instead there's an old man with an American with a Southern accent, which I didn't like in those days. Okay, and he looks at me and he says, "My name is James. I've been waiting for you for a long time. It's about time you got here." And he left. So our first son is James. That's how he got his name.
All right. Well, Dr. Joel, is there anything else you'd like to share?
Nothing. It's just, it's not an accident that I liked football because I was miserable as a child, and football is like the team sport. I mean, there's baseball and basketball, but your success on a football field depends on every teammate on the field.
Gave you a sense of connection and belonging and teamwork and
Right.
All right. Well, Dr. Joel, I want you guys listening please consider getting the book, A Man Like You and Me. And listen, I bought the book and I'll be writing my review on Amazon shortly. But guys, this is a spiritual adventure. The story is about spiritual encounters. Dr. Joel alluded to some of those, some miraculous type experiences.
And again, the purpose of the book is to instill faith in the reader. It doesn't have to be Catholic, just instill faith in God. Because again, without love, you can't be happy. Without an idea that there's God in your life, whether you know about him or not, you're missing out. You're missing out on a big chunk of life.
A Man Like You and Me, a supernatural adventure story. You can get this book in your favorite bookstore, online or in print. Thank you so much for being my guest today.
Oh, thank you for having me. It was a great time.
Awesome.